Thank you so much for watching. Back to the great chat in a moment or two's time. Email paul@skynews.com.au. Now, as you know, big tech is going out of its way to, well, pick winners and losers, to pick the information you are allowed to see and not allowed to see. Perfect example, right? Think about how all of those stories were written in the early transition period between the 2016 election and the inauguration of Donald Trump, right? In that period of time, it became very publicly discussed that potentially Donald Trump Jr. had been reached out to by the Russians, that someone somewhere had sent him an email and he'd written back, oh, I'm interested in this. You've got some good dirt on Hillary, let's have a meeting. This was one of the main pillars that led to Russia, Russia, Russia. And as you have seen, every rumour about Donald Trump becomes a front page story. Everyone and anyone who we ever walked past in the street got a book deal to shit can him. But literally, have you seen anywhere in the past few weeks when people are writing about, OK, Joe Biden, incoming president, what's it all about? What's the ups, what's the downs, what's the risk, what's the problems? Have you seen anyone anywhere write in an Australian publication what is an absolute fact, that Joe Biden's son Hunter has not one but 2 hard drives being investigated by the FBI right now? Right now. The allegations being that he was brokering access to his father, among others, by Chinese intelligence services. Now, I absolutely hope that there's nothing to see here. I absolutely hope that he gets fully exonerated, as Donald Trump Jr. did. But you think you might be able to hear about it. Also, yes, the media networks have called that the election is over. But there are example after example after example, including of people who have signed statutory declarations about things that they have seen that have gone wrong during this election process. Will it be enough to flip everything back Trump's way? I don't know. But should you be able to hear about what people are willing to sign a legal document to say they have seen? I would think so. But we live in the era of censorship, when the inconvenient truths must be silenced and the rumours must be amplified. And it's happening right here, right now to Sky News. Jack Houghton is the digital editor here at Sky News. Great man, firstly. You're the reason we're in HD tonight. OK, now, again, I'm not going to talk about what anyone else has said, and other presenters can defend themselves, and that's not the issue, all right?
Sure.
But give us an idea of what has been happening to some of the content we've been putting up on things like Facebook.
So I guess it depends how far back you want to go, but traditionally, these social media platforms, particularly Twitter and Facebook, have always defined themselves to be platforms and not publishers. It's a really important distinction. It means that they can't be sued for defamation.
They're the telephone company. They're not in charge of what is said on the phone.
Exactly.
We just connect you to the phone. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a distinction which means that we wear all of the risk, all of the liability for all the content we put out there, and we have to vet it. We have to make sure it's accurate. But they have now overreached, and the US election was always going to be a stress test. We always knew that this was we were going to see how they were going. They were hauled before the US Senate inquiry, and they were asked about this, and they said, we're going to crack down on it. But now we've got a situation where last week we quoted Donald Trump. They labelled it misinformation. Now, these are fact-checkers from PolitiFact, very left-leaning organisation, and the way that Facebook have done this, they've set up third-party independent fact-checkers, but they slant very left-leaning, and then they can kind of wipe their hands with it.
And the groups like, look, Google this sort of stuff, Southern Poverty Law Centre, like a whole bunch of very activist groups that have a very obvious slant. But the consequence, right, is that, and again, we won't bore everyone with the absolute granular stuff here, but if you get sort of essentially enough crosses against your name, you can lose your page. Let alone money and all the rest of it that comes around it, but just information, right? The stuff that has nothing to do with the American election, that's stuff about, you know, literally what happened today with Albo and Joel Fitzgibbon, or a response to Four Corners last night. People wouldn't be able to see that. I'm not asking how far down the road we are, but does Facebook have the capacity that if they continually ding you, then bang, you're out of the game?
Certainly, yeah. I believe it's a 3-strike rule.
Wow.
And it's not just Sky News. You know, CNN's been pinged, The Guardian's been pinged, and I'm not, you know, I'm not going to make any case for whether those particular ones were valid or not, because I wasn't involved in the cases. But they have such overwhelming power to completely change the algorithms that news organisations rely on, disrupt their revenue streams based on opinions. Now, this PolitiFact judgment here, They said that Donald Trump, he wasn't allowed to say that ballots magically disappear and that they were surprise ballots. And they said, well, they weren't surprise ballots because people warned that they were coming. That is the basis of all of this. So we're saying, well, magic doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So therefore you can't put magic in a headline, and he shouldn't have known that these extra ballots were coming. Therefore you can't quote the President of the United States.
But again, exactly as Jack's trying to explain to everyone here is, they claim they're the telephone company, but then they also want to decide what can be said on the telephone, right? And in a brave new world, where literally in the American election, 140 million people voted, all right? 140 million people didn't even watch the results come in, right? The collective audience, I think, was about the best part of about 40 million, all right? So the extreme majority who voted in the election was somewhere else. They're on YouTube's, they're on all the rest of it. So let's just quickly rank the platforms. Who is the most aggressive about dinging content right now?
It would actually have to be Facebook, and that would surprise you because Twitter is far more public. They put the labels on it, they prevent retweets, and they do that very aggressively. But in terms of behind-the-scenes communications with news organisations, and they would be having this with all news organisations in Australia and also internationally, and so we're getting told to edit our own website by people that live in France, and things that are not a proven fact. They say, well, this is partly missing context. So it's not that the information's false. They don't like how it's presented. And sometimes it's an opinion piece.
Of course. This is the whole thing. And because you've got Sky News in the title and it's an opinion thing, they go, oh, those two things don't match.
Google's incredible. YouTube, they're really supportive. If there's an issue, there's a lot of conversation. We work really well together. Right. Yeah, definitely.
Good man, Jack. Thank you very much. All right, one of the things you can do is if you like the content that you see here on Sky News, go to the main website, take those things and post the links, email things around, share things directly. Don't assume that the machine will share them for you because it ain't going to be happening. Thank you, Jack. I do appreciate it.